Hello and welcome to Dishing Delights. My name is Jenica and today I'm going to share with you another garden tour. Let's get into it. So this is my first garden ever, and I just kind of planted things wherever I felt that they needed to go. Now, I would do things differently next year, but that's the point of your first garden. You're supposed to learn all sorts of new things, and I sure have already. But this entire garden cost me less than 300 bucks. And I think that it is very important to encourage new gardeners to just plant some seeds, and food wants to grow. It just wants to. So I want to encourage you, if you want to start a fall crop, start it right now. Start some lettuces, start your kale, start your Swiss chard maybe. You could probably wait a little bit for that. Some peas, some beans, squash even. A lot of areas still have a lot of time to grow squash. So just put something in the ground and be encouraged to grow, because there's nothing better than coming out in your garden and picking a handful of lettuce or a pepper for dinner that night. I just really want to encourage you to grow a garden, because I waited so many years to grow a garden of my own, and for under 300 bucks to get such a lush area that's going to produce so much food for my family, it just makes me so happy. Now let's start off with our containers. In our containers, in this one I have some carrots, we have some squash that are just starting. What I've been doing is I have been starting these and then transplanting them, just because I am out of seed trays right now. We have some radishes that have gone to seed. I just started pickling some of these and they were super delicious. In this I have a few beans. Right here I have another squash plant, and in here I have a tomato plant and a squash plant. Now this is a sucker from another plant, and I just tossed it in here, and it was very yellow and droopy, and it is doing so well, so I'm so happy about that. Now starting in my first row, I have a squash plant right here, I have a tomato plant right here. We have all sorts of squash plants that are just popping up everywhere. What seems to have happened is the squash seeds that I planted earlier, they didn't germinate until like 4 weeks later, and I'd already replaced them. But that is perfectly fine, because as we pull these bigger squash plants out, we will give room for the other squash plants to grow. And my peppers, they seem to be the one thing that's not doing too well. Some of them are doing great, some of them are not. And I have one right here that is just recovering. I lost most of the leaves earlier in the season. As you can see here over on this pepper plant, we're starting to get a delicious purple pepper. I cannot wait for that. Here's another sucker that I moved over here, and it's growing tomatoes, so that is super exciting. We have squash plants lined all the way in between all of the tomato plants. And in all of these empty spacings, I planted beans. And you can probably see, let's see if any are coming up yet. Maybe not over here, but I know that over here we have some beans sprouting. We have another purple pepper here. Now in all of my beds I did plant grains. It's kind of like a cover crop, because I did not mulch these beds. We just weren't sure about getting mulch from an off-site source. We're going to buy a mulcher, but that's not going to be till August. So because it's our first year, we're just trying new things. And I planted some kale, and these kale are doing wonderful, except for the bugs are going after these. And the reason that I've left all of this kale in here, even though the bugs are coming after them, is because they seem to only be hitting the kale. So I'm like, whatever, let them have their treat. As you can see, we do have some other peppers starting in this first row. Oh, I see that this tomato plant fell down. My husband is buying more stakes today, so we are going to go back through and add more stakes to the garden. There's another sucker that I took off that's now having tomatoes of its own. We have a jalapeno plant here. Some little jalapeno starting. And this delicious lettuce, it kind of looks like it's about ready to bolt, so we are probably going to grab that in the next few days. And then over here is a smorgasbord of who knows what. Looks like carrots. We have some basil. This is the basil that I keep taking from. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Is I'm going to take some basil for lunch today. Oh my gosh, picking that basil just releases the most amazing scent. As you can see, we have a lot of greens here that are growing. At the end of each of our rows, I planted a sunflower. I see that this row, oh, it looks like we might have one going now. I thought we had one row missing, but this row has the biggest one of them all, and it's slowly starting to flower. As you can see here, we have sunflowers. We have beautiful heads of lettuce growing. We have our kale right here. We have all sorts of greens, lots of spinach. We have some little pepper plants in here, but I'm not sure if these peppers are really going to do too much. This one looks like it's going to be fine, but we shall see. And then here, this is what you do when you're a broke gardener. You just make use of what you have. We have a tomato that is hanging by a thread onto these two sticks. Probably have to stake it up better later, but hey, this is my first garden. I am working with what I have. Let's see. Doesn't look like this pepper plant is doing anything. But this pepper plant in here, these are Santa Fe peppers, I believe. These are doing so good. I actually already got one off of them. This, I believe, is a jalapeno pepper, and it is not doing anything yet. We've got more peppers. These are something different. I honestly have lost track of what all is in my garden. Let me know below if you have done the same. This is a habanero plant. My husband is super excited about this one. We have another, not sure, another jalapeno pepper right here. There are a few jalapenos on it. Another Santa Fe pepper. On this squash plant, we have a yellow squash that is just starting. I don't know if you can see that. And man, these flowers are just filled with bees every morning. It just fills my heart up so much. And then over here, our peppers are just doing so good. And right here we have a San Marzano tomato plant. This is producing so much fruit. I cannot wait until these start turning. Now on this first bed, I didn't show you, but there is a delicious zucchini on a couple of these plants. This one's like really small. I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to see that because of the shadow, but I'm so thankful to see my zucchini plants starting to flourish. Now, I do understand that there's a whole lot of controversy about planting your hot peppers and your sweet peppers together. And honestly, the whole companion planting, while it can really heal soil, and it is something that you really need to look into, don't let it discourage you from planting plants close together that may not do that well. I know people that say never to plant peas and cucumbers together. I know people that grow peas and cucumbers together all the time. I don't know if it's peas or beans that I'm thinking of, but one of the other. But anyways, I planted all of my sweet peppers with my hot peppers, and I do not plan to save the seed. So I have enough seeds for next year already. I'm not too worried about saving the seeds right now. But if you are wanting to save the seeds, just look and see how different things do with each other. I know summer squash and winter squash, they will cross-pollinate, so if you're saving seeds, you may not want to do those close together. Same with the hot peppers and sweet peppers, because the last thing you want to do is think you're growing a bell pepper next year and it tastes like a habanero. Although it might be a fun trick. Right here I have my zinnias lined up, some beautiful wildflowers that I just could not take out of my garden because, I mean, they just make me so happy in the morning when I come out here. We have our tomatillo plant. We have a squash plant underneath it. We have a brandy wine pink tomato that is running up this. And then I just did these yesterday. I added 3 planters of peas. This is an experiment. I'm going to like trail some up this and trail them down. And I'm just gonna see how they do. I've never grown any of this stuff before, so everything is just an experiment, as you can see by some of the madness that's going on right here. Like, I tucked a squash plant in everywhere I can. That was what my husband and I were most excited about. So there's winter squash and summer squash everywhere. I mean, look at these beautiful fruits. Oh, I'm so excited. And also, I have noticed that my tomatillos are growing in size as well. Now this is my forest of tomato plants. I know I told you in the last tour that we were getting 3 cattle panels, and that just didn't happen. Sometimes, you know, plants change. And then everything started filling out and we were like, whatever, we'll just stake any way we can. And my goal is to get 1 fruit off of each plant. And if I do that, I have succeeded. Look at every single tomato in this garden is loaded down. I don't think that there's one that doesn't have fruit. I mean, it is absolutely beautiful. Now, as you can see here at the end of this row, we have some more beautiful lettuces. Now let's talk about my blueberries. I have cardboard laying down, and because we didn't get the mulch in, I have just been weeding, and as I weed, I have been filling in these little areas with the weeds, and that just might be what we do until we can get the mulcher. So I don't even know if it's called a mulcher. They're having the time of their life. But our blueberry plants, we have 4 of them. They're definitely getting new growth. They're definitely becoming established. And that's really all I can ask for, because we did plant these super late in the season. It was an impulse buy, and it is what it is. Now, these are what my rows are starting to look like. They are a beautiful jungle. I am just loving it. I know I just keep saying that, but oh no, this was not done last night. I need to spend some time out here and figure out what is going on. Okay, that's what I'm doing today. This is a beefsteak tomato plant. This was the first plant to show fruit, and like, I have big hands, like giant hands, like as big as my 6'4" husband. So these are giant. Now, this is the real project for the day. I have a squash plant at the end of this and at the end of this as well, although I think this one, oh, maybe it's coming back. It seemed to be dying. So we will see. There's zinnias also planted around here, but this right here is the tomato forest. Now my goal today is to get all of this trimmed up and kind of tucked back away. I've had to do that every week. And as you can see here, just like all my other tomato plants, all of these tomatoes are just loaded down with fruit. I mean, everywhere you look. And then here's some tomatillos. and I just really need to tend to this. On this trellis, I also have some winter squash. You can see it better from the other angle, but I also have some winter squash that is trellising up. Now, some of these are bush varieties, like this is a bush variety, so there will be some that get pulled out early and get replaced with something else. Right here, in one of my other pots, I have some carrots, some more radishes that went to seed, this beautiful head of lettuce that I've been eyeing the last few weeks. I also started another squash plant. I just started squash plants wherever I could. Now, as you can see here, I have expanded my garden quite a bit. I work at a convenience store. I do groceries for them. So at the end of the day, I take home all of the boxes that I took product out of and take the tape off of them and then lay them out here. I lay them about 4 layers high right now. We're eventually gonna mulch over it. This whole area right here is going to be doubled over here for next year. We're just trying to make the best use of this entire space. So here is an acorn squash that is just doing fantastic. We are just starting to get a few fruits off of that. Our tomatoes obviously are doing stunning. This one we noticed fell over yesterday. It had a stake next to it, kind of holding it up against this trellis, and that stake broke last night. So that's why my husband's going to get better stakes. This squash plant, I need to pull those leaves off of it. Look at this buttercup squash. They are doing so amazing. I also have a buttercup squash in there. Let's see if I can show you. Now that was the first one that started producing fruit, and it is looking stunning. Now I have a random pea in there. We also have some beans that we tossed in there. Like I said, anywhere that had an area that we could toss beans into, we did. As you can see, our spaghetti squash is doing amazing. If you don't know, this was a compost pile. I tossed in all my leftover spaghetti squash starts, and they kind of just started growing and took off. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna let it go. If food wants to grow, I'm going to let it grow. What is this? Let me pull that because it's definitely going to seed. And have some more carrots in there. I also have some cucumbers in there as well. But as you can see, I have squash plants taking over my yard, and I could not be any more happy with it. This is just filled with the most beautiful yellow flowers every morning when I come out here, and it just makes me so happy that I cannot contain myself. This is the first place I go to every single morning. I am just so in love with this garden. I'm like getting choked up, oh my gosh. But this is just so much fun to me, and it's only my first year, so I can only imagine how much fun it's gonna be when next year I put more resources into my garden, because this is just less than $300 total for all of this amazingness. I just cannot get over it. And over here, we are killing the grass because my husband wants a giant asparagus patch. So this is what that is for. We also killed the grass for the garden in the same way. We just took this steel that's just always in our yard. My husband's a construction worker. They specialize in pole barns, and we have 30 different colors of steel everywhere. So, I'll also give you an update on the raspberries, because I have got 2 gallons so far, and today is the picking day. So I need to come out here and pick. Oh wow. Doesn't look like there's as many left out here. As you can see, most of these have been picked through. Oh no, there's a bunch over here. Okay. So I definitely need to come out tonight, maybe when it's not 88 degrees, and pick some of these beautiful berries. It might be my last picking because I know that our neighbors Theirs are already all dried up, and I think those were like the first established plants. So, and next year what we plan to do is at the end of the season, we're gonna cut a bunch of these branches off and we are gonna move them into these areas that do not have raspberries. So we want to line the whole entire property. We're also adding in some fruit trees. We're doing that into another area. In our mulberry season, it's not coming to an end, but I quit collecting them because I think 20 pounds of mulberries may be enough. And then our walnut tree that is right here, that harvest season is going to be coming in the early fall. That one's going to be a hard one because it's going to be the same time that I am preserving all of these vegetables, but you know, we'll figure it out. Now over here I have an assorted bed. This bed does not get a lot of sun, so I just kind of want to experiment in here, but I am getting some beans, so I'm actually going to pull that one off because that looks like it's ready. I have 4 different kinds of beans. I have some cucumbers that I was going to trellis, but we are going to trellis the next round. And we're just going to see how well these do on the ground. And I have a bunch of that in this bed. I also just planted a bunch more beans, some dill, and I think that's about it in this bed. We have some greens. These have just really got hit so hard by some storms that we had, and they just didn't fully recover, but that's fine. This is just all an experiment. Really need to weed this bed though. Oh my gosh. I'm so happy that I planted the rest of this packet yesterday because these are delicious. And I don't know if you remember this bed. I think I deemed this like the hospital garden. But apparently this is like the funeral garden because this is where all good things go to die. Well, they weren't good. They all were damaged in the first place. But I'm going to pull some of these tomato plants out that just are not doing too well. I do have some greens in here. I have some peas in here. I have some squash in here somewhere right there. But honestly, I think that I'm just going to let this go wild and do its thing. I don't really plan to pull much from it, but everything that I had a start for that I didn't have room in the main garden, I just tossed in here. They were doing well for a while, but for some reason this part of the property just gets hit by the wind and the storms because as you can see, it's right off of the corn. And now that corn will provide a little wall so the wind isn't as crazy, but you know, the damage is done. So my hospital garden is about a 1 out of 10 right now. But there are some delicious greens in there. Now, thank you so much for coming around and spending some time in my beautiful garden with me. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you do enjoy this video, please hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and hit that notification bell because if you do that, you can be notified when I upload my next video. Thank you so much for watching.